Welcome everyone, this is Yvonne Davis and David Steele. We're accredited facilitators with the Rocky Mountain Compassionate Communication Network, and you are joining us for Unleash Your Creativity, a blending of The Artist's Way by Julie Cameron and Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. So today we are in week 10, and this is called Recovering a Sense of Self-Protection. So Julie Cameron has been talking a lot about the things that distract us, like addictions. And I, was thinking about this topic a lot this past week. And as I've mentioned before, we just got done with the Sarah Payton workshop a week ago. So all this week, not only have I been thinking about the material in week 10, but it has been infused with the work that we did with Sarah Payton. And so I've just been having incredible insight after incredible insight every single day, just like mind-blowing insights every single day. So here I'm going to share with you some of the things that I've come to realize. One was that I was living in a power over, power under dynamic, and basically living that way my whole life up to this point without even realizing it. It's only because I really started to speak up lately about, needs that I was longing to have met, and beginning to understand as I would talk more and more about how I was experiencing this power over, power under dynamic, that I saw how much I was actually creating that dynamic, like that was the reality I was living in. So I interpreted things through that perception, through that lens of perception. And so the information would come into my brain and it would get filtered through that lens, and then it would turn into a reality of power over, power under dynamics. And so not only was I perceiving information that way, and reorganizing it in my brain that way, but then I would act out in the world as if that were the reality. So most of the time, the way that this would sort of manifest is that I would not speak up because I thought other people have more power than me and they are not interested in what I have to say. So, why even bother speaking up? But pretty soon, I think I just got so angry. I just started speaking up. And that's when I started to encounter the realities of other people and how they were helping me to see that this reality I was living in of power over, power under was actually just a construct in my own mind. It was a story in my own mind. And I was helping to play out that story like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because, if you believe certain things, you act as if they're true, and then they become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So that's the way it was. So that was the first thing I began to realize and speak up about. Second was that I need to see and honor and make a commitment to my authentic self. And I had been waiting for years for David to see my authentic self. And finally, in a split second, I realized I don't need him to see my authentic self. Only I need to see it. So that was huge. And I decided I was going to really commit to being my authentic self and living my authentic life no matter what it takes. And then the third thing I came to realize is that collaboration is really important to me. And I'm, looking back on my life, I can see it was always important to me. It was always a need that I was longing to have met, but I couldn't speak out because of the fact that I was living in this power under. Like, I'm power under. Let's see if I can do this. So, okay, so that would be me under, and then the other people have power over me. So yeah, I thought, well, I can't ask to collaborate because nobody's interested in what I have to say, right? Well, I'm not going to say anything. But the problem is that if you don't say anything, they can't read your mind. They can't know that you would actually like to work on projects with them and you would like to collaborate. So once I could see the power over, power under reality I was living in, that I was constructing in my own mind, and how I was waiting for other people to see my authenticity instead of seeing it myself, then it led to the third thing, which is, you know what, I actually like to collaborate, and I would like to collaborate with a lot more people a lot more of the time. And now that I see, like, I'm not really in this power over under dynamic and I can really honor my authentic self, then I was able to speak about how much I actually enjoy collaboration and contribution. So these are major turnarounds in my life and in my reality. So the thing about contribution is that I never believed that anyone would value my contributions because, again, living in that power over under reality and not really seeing my authenticity, I thought, well, no, why would anyone be interested in my contributions? But actually, turns out that people are interested in them. And so I decided to start giving more weight and more value to my contributions and not worrying so much about how they will feel received. Because before I was always afraid of rejection because I didn't think people would be interested. Now I know that that's not true, so I'm less afraid of rejection. So I think I'll stop there for the moment because that's quite a bit. And there were even more insights, like mind-blowing insights every single day. But I think that's a good stopping point, and see if you want to take that as a jumping off point.
Oh, what do you need me for? Okay, that was a power underploy. So, when we deny ourselves or do things in contradiction to our own authenticity, that's actually pretty painful. And so we want to distract ourselves from that discomfort. If we're stuck, and especially if it's an invisible pattern, we'll feel discomfort in our lives and in ourselves and not even necessarily understand why. And so the insights that Yvonne is talking about came as a result of some very authentic self-reflection, some deep vulnerability, and some for real risk-taking that has paid off. And she had to develop a certain amount of sense of security or safety before she could do that. One of the things that we're in a power over, power under, we're living in a constant state of judgment. Mm-hmm. And we can't be judging others if we're not judging ourselves, because that's what we do. We're either judging or we're not. If we're judging everything, including ourselves. If we're not judging, then we're not judging ourselves. And so creating that sense of safety, which really kind of cycles back to, was it the first week, recovering a sense of safety, or the second week?
First week, yeah.
First week, yeah. So that's just like so pivotal to be able to take the risks required to look at addictive behaviors and distractions. And we've talked a bit about distraction earlier, but let me just talk about Yvonne, at the beginning you said it was just a story. I would say just a story. Stories are incredibly powerful. And I was able to occupy years of my life by looking out into the world and focusing on how screwed up it was, and how stupid American foreign policy was, and how people are oppressed, and how the status quo is not sustainable, and how greed is destroying the world, and how there are people out to oppress other people for personal gain and all of that kind of stuff. And I had brilliant rational arguments. And the whole time I was spinning on that, it occupied my time, and it gave me a sense of purpose and fulfillment. And so now I think of people these days who get on Facebook and lead and make really snide or snarky little comments and move on. And if you try to engage them in conversation, they're absent. But there's this sense of power, like, I'm telling truth, I'm calling it the way it is. And that was one of my addictions, because it distracted me from my fear of being accepted. By looking out at the world out there and what was screwed up within it, I didn't have to look at what was happening in my own apartment, in my own relationships, in my own world. And so it just filled my mind with thought. So I didn't have to be present with who I was, because that was very uncomfortable to be present with who I was. And that's what addiction, to a large degree, in my opinion, is all about. Is there some discomfort in us? And so I'm just curious, Yvonne, you talked about these revelations, and I see them as the tip of the iceberg. This is something that surfaced and exploded and that was profound. But what did you do to lay the foundation to create the opening so that surfacing could happen? We look at a nice, beautiful painting. Before that painting was painted, the wood had to be grown. For the frame, the wood had to be grown and tended, harvested, cut and milled with all the stuff it takes to mill it. And the canvas had to be woven. The plants had to be grown to build the canvas. It had to be woven. It had to be stretched. The pigments had to be gathered somewhere and created. The brush had to be invented. The lighting had to exist. The space to do it in. All of that stuff had, even though we take it for granted, would support the ability to make that painting. And the painting is the manifestation that you see. So I'm just curious if you talk a little bit about the underlying things that you did to support yourself to get to the point where you could have this touching in with your authenticity, which to me is saying, giving up distraction. Yeah. My attention is not distracted by all this stuff that's going on and all the stuff that's going on in me. And oh my God, I need to transform, and I've got these self-conscious, invisible self-sabotage mechanisms that I've got to overcome. And that's a distracting story just as much as the world out there is screwed up. It's a distracting story, in my opinion. But under both of those stories, there's a yearning a yearning for some kind of harmony, fulfillment, some kind of care that is shared. So it's not like I don't want to judge them as bad or anything. I just want to underscore that often when we've got an obsession going on, a story or an addiction, it's so that we don't have to pay attention to something else. So what did you do to create an environment where there was room for this self-reflection and self-connection to emerge?
Well, I think the first thing I have to say is that, why did it exist in the first place? And I think the answer is because of trauma in childhood. But we can we can create these realities in our mind and live them out. We can spend our entire lives living out those stories and stay distracted. And I know people like that. They are distracted by politics. They're distracted by their addictions, all kinds of things. And they just they couldn't stand to sit still long enough to even get to know themselves. So that's where it all begins. But why is someone able to finally, sit still and take a look at these things and transform them? And I think it does take time, doing the artist's way. It takes you through 12 weeks of committed examination. And if you really do the work, you will transform. I know because I've done this program.
How many times?
when in a group, this is the second time. I think it's more powerful in a group than just doing it by myself.
And you did it by yourself how many times?
Oh, I can't really, I mean, to say I did it by myself, I think it's lying.
Okay.
I pretended to do it by myself.
All right. You persisted at it for a long time. It didn't show up, and it was like flipping a switch, and all of a sudden the choir rose, and you're all blurry.
Oh, goodness.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, this reminds me of the Woody Allen movie, like the deconstruction of Henry or something. But anyway, so the programs like The Artist's Way, they can be very transformative if you do the work. And, you know, and if something's going on, then the question is, like, not to assume. Like, for example, you might say, well, what can I do? You know, I had my car broke down and I have all these bills to pay. I had to get a job. I didn't have time to do The Artist's Way anymore. Well, then the question, and I'm saying this because this actually happened to me the first time I did it in a group. And I looked at that and I said, that's very interesting that I managed to have this financial collapse happen right when I'm in the middle of doing The Artist's Way. That's very interesting. And I asked myself, you know, why did I create this reality? Instead of assuming that it was something external to me that was out of my control, I took responsibility and I said, why did I create this financial crisis in my life at this very time in my life? And I realized that that actually was a pattern for me. It was a pattern of distraction. And that, you know, if I want to live on the financial edge, that's one thing. But this was different because it was about not taking responsibility for choices that I made, which then set me up for a crisis. And I did that in relationships, like, you know, falling in love with someone who was emotionally distant and unavailable. And so I would be constantly striving to get their attention. That was an addiction and a distraction. Using financial crises as distraction, using family drama as a distraction. Yeah, politics can be a good one.
Helicopters flying overhead.
That probably doesn't even set noise. Probably doesn't even set.
I bet I picked it up.
So, what are some others? You know, aside from the obvious addictions, I'm talking about things that are more subtle, that seem like they're real in our world, external to us, that we have no control over, and we believe that absolutely. But if you take a moment and ask yourself, how and why did I create this? Not just assuming that it was something external that you had no control over whatsoever. So in a sense, you're a victim to it. Hey, I couldn't help it. My car broke down. What do you expect? I didn't make my car break down. But then I realized, wait a minute. I made choices along the way. You know, choices about whether I spent money on maintenance, choices about whether I spent money, like if I had savings to cover those expenses, whether I had money to buy a new car, put a down payment on a car. So those are all choices. So it wasn't external to me. I mean, it's to be expected. If you don't put money into maintenance, or if your car is, you know, 15 years old, it's going to break down. That's not a surprise, you know? Mm-hmm. It's not like it comes out of the blue. It's the natural order of things. So, and also the fact that how you respond, you can respond in crisis mode, or you can respond as if this is a perfectly natural thing. Life is cycles. We have our ups and we have our downs, and expect those downtimes, so that when life becomes difficult, you don't get thrown, you know, overboard. But you just realize, okay, now's the storm. We just keep sailing through, you know, and use that as material. You know, it's not like it's separate from the artist's way. It is the artist's way. It's the grist for the mill to do the transformational work. So, well, I could go on and on about this topic, but I also know, you know, we can only take the stuff in small chunks. It's pretty big. It's pretty deep stuff. So I don't want to go on too long.
All right. Well, so I think maybe we're good. I want to, for the last video that we're going to do tomorrow, I want to talk a little bit about the brain.
Okay.
And since we did the Sarah Payton thing and how that fits in.
Okay.
And then we'll be done with week 10.
Okay. Alrighty, so we're going to bring this video to a close. And we hope that you enjoyed it. It's pretty deep stuff. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comment boxes below. And as always, if you haven't yet subscribed, please subscribe. Click the bell for notifications. And click like on the video. And we'll be good to go. Alrighty. Thanks. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.